What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call them mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut in the ocean. Yeah. What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call them mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut. She says that I'm cool. I'm like, yeah, that's true. I believe in G-O-D. Don't believe in T-H-O-D. She keep playing me down. I'ma play her for fun. Don't really know my mental. Hi, this is John Cullen. Welcome to another episode of Web of Deception. I'm joined for episode number 21 by my co-host, Jason Goodman. Jason, great to see you. Thanks for joining me again. This is going to be a really important show because I'm not sure if the audience knows who Peter Smith is, what role he played, how important a character he is in the overall story, and that he was kind of a pivotal guy in how you got to meet Charles Ortel. And it kind of takes us back to the beginning of the Web of Deception, because this is when, George Webb and I guess it was Trish the Dish, right? And she helped set all this stuff up. And so it kind of takes us back to the beginning. I mean, sometimes the way the story comes together, we have to, revisit that first chapter and fill in some more of the detail. And so this Peter Smith saga seems to be kind of important in the overall scheme of Russiagate. And it seemed like this is a good time to dig into it because you've been talking about Norm Eisen, the guy with the missiles.
Felix Sater.
Felix Sater. And so it just seems like this is actually a really good time to get back to what was this whole Peter Smith saga. And I think this is a big question mark for a lot of people that don't know. And before we get into it, I want to let the audience know, you did a couple podcasts this week. You were on Coffee and a Mic with Mike Ferris. Yep. And Mike does a great job. Mike's got a great thing going there with Coffee and a Mic. He's had a lot of big name people on the show. And I guess your interactions down around the courthouses drove a lot of views on Twitter. So if you're not following Jason on Twitter, it's at JG for Jason Goodman _ CSTT for Crowdsource the Truth. So if you're not following him, you should be. And one of his tweets last week went super viral, over 2 million views. Don Jr. saw it and is following Jason now. So a lot happened in the last week. Mike Ferris from Coffee and a Mic, I guess, reached out and asked you to do the show, and you did that, and that was awesome. And you also were on, with Dr. Jason Dean, and I've been on his show a couple times now. Great guy, and you had an opportunity to connect with him. How was that for you? What was it like for you to be on somebody else's show where you're the one bringing all the content? You were talking about lawfare, I guess, in both cases. What was that like for you?
It was good. This is the wrong Mike Ferris. That's not him. But it was very good.
Yeah, I think it's Ferris, I think. And it's Coffee and a Mic. At Coffee and a Mic or something like that.
Yeah, it was very good to be with those guys and to share the story. I should have had that stuff ready, but, sometimes doing this all on the fly, people know where to find Coffee and a Mic. It was great to be able to lay it out, because sometimes when you're explaining these stories to people who haven't heard it before, you're going over ground that perhaps I've been over 1 million times, but because I'm going back to the beginning, it had a very happy accident that occurred, which is that I discovered something really important about information that we've looked at on this show and that I've been looking at literally for years. And I saw something in it that's been sitting right in front of my face the whole entire time.
I saw it on the show. Missed. You almost fell out of your chair. You were doing the show with Jason Dean, and he pulled something up you pulled something up that you've looked at many times as one of the letters, and there was another name in there, and you were like, oh my god, how
did I miss this?
And it was like one of these. This kind of changes everything moments because
it kind of, it's like when you double down. This was like doubling down in a piece of evidence. It was remarkable, and you were like, wow, wow, wow! I can't believe we just saw this
Yeah.
now. So I'm excited to share that with the audience. I'm looking forward to that too.
Well, and
And
we're
we're
going to talk
also
about that. Let's talk about that for a minute,
yeah,
John, now, because that's going to
okay,
let people know what we're going to get into
right.
in the
That's what I was going to
sponsor
say.
exclusive
Yeah,
segment.
that's what I
And
was
for
going to say.
people who aren't sponsors yet, people can join us either on subscribestar.com/I am John Cullen, patreon.com/I am John Cullen, odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. The thing that you're talking about is this email that was sent from Benjamin Wittes to Reinhold Niebuhr. And Reinhold Niebuhr is the super secret double probation email address for James Comey. And these guys are friends. This is an email that we've read on the show before. I got it because it was entered as evidence by the Senate Homeland Security and Government Accountability Committee. This at the bottom here is what's called a Bates stamp, and that's what gets applied to evidence once it's been authenticated. This email, if we just came across it on the internet, would be hearsay, even though it contains really damning information. But because it is authenticated evidence, this is evidence. This is not like something I made up. This is not something I got from QAnon or something like that. And the amazing breakthrough is we've spoken about all the contents of this, how it's Ben Wittes emailing Comey about this very strange document that he has that's prepared by a private British intelligence company. We believe this company to be Capital Alpha Security, run by Matt Tate. And I'll explain during the sponsor exclusive segment how I came to that belief. But Wittes tells Comey that it was given to him by Shane Harris. We'll look into Shane Harris as well. Harris is pictured right here in the thumbnail. This is an older picture of him. He looks like he's taken Ozempic recently. But for some reason, Ben Wittes likes to have these weird dog T-shirts.
What's with the dog shirts and Ben Wittes? It
I
makes it
don't
look
know.
like his hand breasts, as the eyes of the dogs are always on his
Yeah,
it's like, Ben, it's not a good look, bro. I mean,
it's
I dig the
bizarre.
whole dog thing. I'm all about dogs, but wearing it as a shirt is just kind
Yeah.
of a 6-year-old thing. I mean, it's not really.
Exactly. That works if you're 5 or if you own
Yeah.
the dog grooming place and people are coming into the dog grooming place and you've got these different dog shirts every day. It's kind of, goes with the shtick.
All right, all right,
Okay?
all right. I'll cut
But
you some slack on that.
but it's just weird. But also, this story connects very much to Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. And we'll talk about that because he's just been coming up. People are like, oh, why are you going after Flynn? Don't eat your own. It's like, who are all these strangers on the internet who think they understand what I'm doing, what I'm about, whose, side I'm on? According to them, there are 2 sides and I must pick one. And if I criticize anything, it's going to be, Anyway, we've got morons agitating the chat, which I want our legitimate viewers to understand. They do that because they're trying to dissuade people from watching what we're talking about, because this is going right to the heart of what the FBI was trying to do to Donald Trump and continues to try to do to Donald Trump. So we've been over the contents of this. He's
Well, let's
talking
go to
about a
the top.
document.
Hang on. I want to go back to the top because I got a couple questions.
Wait.
One,
The big thing,
one
though,
observation.
let me give the big thing here, because we
Okay.
were aware that Ben Wittes sends this email to Reinhold Niebuhr, which is James Comey. James Comey, through his Reinhold Niebuhr email address, forwards it to his comey@ic.fbi.gov address at a little after 1 p.m. on the same day, the 28th. And the interesting thing that I discovered is that we've been focused on the contents of this and the fact that James Rybicki and Andrew McCabe got it, but it's also sent right here to James Baker. And they didn't bother to redact his email address. He doesn't work for the FBI anymore, so you can't email him at this address. But it's also stupid because they're telling you the syntax of how these FBI executive email addresses work, which they really shouldn't want to reveal. But James Baker at ic.fbi.gov, this is the guy who will become the Twitter general counsel, deputy general counsel, who is working as the deputy general counsel at Twitter on November 1st, 2022, when I went there to tell Elon Musk that the FBI was controlling Twitter, and I got choked.
Imagine that. All right, couple questions here, because I'm sure that the people are probably wondering the same thing I'm wondering. This pseudonym that James Comey is using, or that it seems like the first email is to the pseudonym.
Yes.
But then Comey starts forwarding it to people and kind of blows his own cover. Am I
stupid, right?
This right?
Yes.
So walk us through this, and how did you figure out that this Reinhold Boogie whatever is a pseudonym for? How did you figure that out? How did you come?
I believe James Comey revealed it in a book. It was Diane West who first told me about that. And, Reinhold Niebuhr, he's this philosopher. He's an American theologian, according to this. It says that I think he was some kind of communist guy. Let's just quickly review this because it's been a while since I spoke to Diana West about this.
But he died in 71. So clearly Ben Wittes is not sending an email to a dead guy who died in 70. Right. So he's been dead since 1971.
Yeah.
And it appears to be a pseudonym for Comey. Now, the point that you made earlier that we can't just rush past, because I don't think that people understand the weight of this. Hearsay is everything other than sworn testimony and stuff with the stamps you just showed us. Everything else is considered hearsay. And so if it's right, if it's under oath or stamped like this, right?
Here's how it goes. Anything not said under oath in court is hearsay, and then there are certain exceptions to hearsay. So, like, in other words, if I find an email from somebody from 2 years ago saying, hey, something's going to happen a week from now, and then it happens, if the thing that the hearsay document is talking about is like, if it's like saying, hey, 9/11 is going to happen in a week, and then everybody knows 9/11 happened, that's exempted. I forget the language they use, but because subsequent events have proven it true, that's an exception. If you're dead, if the person like if you have a video of somebody and they're dead, I think that.
But the point is, this is official stuff. This is entered into meaning. Even though it's got crazy looking stuff and strange names and stuff,
it's authenticated.
Right.
That's this was evidence.
Right. So this isn't any. You didn't do the whiteout. This is how how we got it from the Senate or whoever the hell you got, the Library of Congress.
Yeah. No, it's right there on the Senate website.
Okay, so let's step through this, just kind of the sequence, because it's a threaded email, and it begins with Ben Wittes, who's working at Brookings Institute, who many people have alleged might be sort of like where you get to go to work after you train at the CIA. So a lot of people like Rydell, Bruce Rydell, et cetera, have said that they are former CIA people, and now they work at Brookings. So we'll leave it at that. So Ben Wittes is sending a note to a pseudonym that he knows is James Comey.
Yep.
And that's the initiation, and it goes to the pseudonym. Is that right? And who else?
Yeah.
He doesn't CC anybody else on that, but it's the next step in this, which is kind of where Comey just kind of pulls a Joe Napoli and kind of blows the whole thing. I mean, it's kind of like...
Well, I don't know. I mean, what's the protocol? It does seem weird.
Walk us through it. So walk us through the next step in the thread here. So what happens? So Ben sends this to Reinhold. Yeah. And then what's the next step in the thread? So that's at 11:48 on
think about
December
this for 28th. A second, though.
All right.
It's December 28th, right? And that's like, who the hell is sending emails to the FBI? Everybody is doing Christmas stuff. And,
hour and a half later. All right, so an hour and a half later, he sends it to himself.
He's rushed.
And says, All right, so let's look at this. So now this is so I want the audience to understand what they're seeing here. This is James Comey logged into his pseudonym email account, sending the note from Ben Wittes to his official FBI account, which the Senate kind of blocked it out, redacted, and then put his name back on top so that you'd know it's him, but we don't want you to know the vernacular. Okay, they're geniuses.
But then from the James
then they show you
Comey
Baker,
address,
right.
He
Because
sends
he's
to Rybicki, McCabe.
all right, but
Baker.
hang on, that's the next step. All right, so that's the next step, though. But that first step is him accepting what Ben Wittes sent him, sending it to himself. Now, to me, this is the part where meaning he has an intent now to distribute this.
Oh yeah,
He's already read it. He's made a note to himself, or no. The weird development is the wording that came from Wittes. That Wittes wrote a weird development.
Yeah, that's the subject from Wittes.
Okay, so he doesn't
This
change
is a
it.
weird
It's
document
himself.
that he doesn't know anything about, but I thought you might like to see it, is what he's saying.
Right, so now he sends it without any text. He just
Right.
forwards the document with no note to Rybicki, Andrew McCabe,
Yeah.
real winner,
And Jim Baker.
and Jim Baker, and then another guy, somebody, James, OGC FBI. Who's James A.
That's
OGC?
Baker, isn't it? Here's McCabe, okay, and then FBI, Baker, blah, blah, blah. That's just giving you some information. Now, you're right.
Okay,
Is this
you're right.
two
You're right. Okay.
emails to Jim Baker? No, who's this here? Wait a minute.
That's McCabe.
Rybicki?
That's McCabe.
Yeah,
redacted.
that's McCabe.
That's
No,
McCabe
it's just
redacted.
a long way of
So
describing
they
his
redacted
email address.
McCabe. They
But
redacted
not Baker.
McCabe, but
Or
not Baker
Rybicki.
and not Rybicki. Right.
I don't know why. But the other thing is, look at this. The FBI now, I mean, he writes back, very odd. I have a few updates for you. Do you have time for a chat? I mean,
From
he's
McCabe.
writing back 2 hours
From
later.
McCabe. Right. Now, this is the big part. I mean, this is how you've talked about this before. This is like forcing a card in Magic.
Yes.
So this is like, all right, so Andrew, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get an email, and and when you get the email, we're on. And now McCabe's going to be the one who's going to say, and he runs with the ball. I mean, we know that.
But it's
we know
important to also remember the dates here, right? Because
Yes.
a lot of people see this thing, oh yeah, British intel firm, big deal. This is the Steele dossier. Everybody knows about that. Who cares? But it isn't. The Steele dossier came around in July of 2016, and the likely purpose of it was to initiate a counterintelligence investigation under the premise that nobody's going to vote for a guy who's being actively investigated by the FBI. But of course, by December 28th, Trump has already won. Inauguration is like weeks away. They had, remember that meeting we spoke about in a previous Web of Deception episode with the Democracy Alliance on November 14th, 2016, had a meeting that Time magazine article is all about, how they're going to help, correct the election or save the republic or whatever they thought they were doing by committing treason. But this is December 28th, 2016. And also remember, that's the same exact day that Adam Sharp releases this PR News Wire press release, which, by the way, anybody in PR, I think, would tell you, if you want a lot of people paying attention to a press release, do not release it on the day between Christmas and New Year's, because nobody is paying attention to anything other than their family. So it's interesting that Adam Sharp chooses to put this out on the same exact date. Now, see, this has changed. I used to look at this all the time, and it didn't have all this. This seems to be updated, but he's got some personal news. I don't remember seeing all this. I saw this for the first time on Coffee and a Mic. It's interesting. It's interesting. David Hawkins used to always talk about how, we're looking at them and they're looking at us. So something seems to have changed about that. We should come back into that and look at it later. But this is all happening on December 28th.
Same day. All right, let's go back to the Ben Wittes note to Reinhold Newbar, whatever his name is. Let's go back to his original note. Now we know McCabe is running with it. So Comey flips it to McCabe. So let's see what's in this body of this message that's actionable that McCabe is running with. So let's break this thing down. Hey, they're writing you because a very strategic document, a very strange document, crossed my desk over here at
Lawfare Institute.
Inside Brookings. Lawfare Institute is a division of Brookings.
Correct. Related entity, yes.
Okay. I mean, he's in the building.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, that's not known because the Lawfare Institute frequently uses Ben Whitty's home address as its main address, and also sometimes money is even sent there. Most of the time, the money is going to a P.O. box, but they've also done something else. They set up the nonprofit. If I'm not mistaken, it's established in Washington, D.C. because...
When did they set up Lawfare?
I think 2010 or something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Man.
But, I mean, again, it's a division, it's a specialized division of the Brookings institution. So maybe they set it up. I mean, again, I don't know everything about this. I know a lot of people hear us talk about these things and have all this great information and they think we know everything. But we are literally looking through a keyhole at most of this stuff. So I don't know everything about it, but I do believe this was started around... 2014, it looks like, was the first year. That's when it gained tax exemption. I'm pretty sure he founded Lawfare as a media company in 2010. I recall that from the website, but the nonprofit part of it seems to have started in 2014. This is all public stuff right here. Anybody can look up the 990 IRS filings for a public tax-exempt charity. And I mean, that's one of the things. If you want your privacy, then you don't run a public tax-exempt charity. But if you're going to be tax-exempt, you're doing that, Charles has told us many times, because you're supposed to be standing in the shoes of government and doing things that are, saving the government money. So as a result, there's a certain degree of, public scrutiny that comes onto your entity that you normally would not get if it was a private entity. But because they've done it in Washington, D.C., it has different rules than other jurisdictions, and it makes it very difficult to determine exactly who is making the donations to these things. You can see that, we've talked before how here's Ben Whitty's. He's no longer paying himself out of it. But David Priest, he's another interesting guy. He gets $150,000 a year from this thing. He tells you on his own Twitter account that he's former CIA, and he pictures himself with George H.W. Bush. Here's Vindman getting his $120,000. They've cut his salary this year, but he's been paid between 21 and 22 over $300,000 from this thing, and I presume he's still on their payroll. So there's lots of useful things you can do with tax-exempt funds if you can get them.
And Priest is the guy who wrote the book How I Would Overthrow a Government or something like that, or
How to Get Rid of the President,
something like that. Yeah, a pretty. I knew he had a pretty controversial title.
It's not very well written, in my opinion, but
$67 for a book.
I don't know if that's the right.
What did he go back? Was that it on top? No.
No, that's not it. It's not giving.
P-R-E-I-S. P-R-E-I-S. You have the E in there?
How come it's not typing, for Christ's sake?
What's that software that monitors your computer at Israel?
Yeah.
What's that called?
Here it is. How to Get Rid of a President.
There you go.
It's just so many ads popping up on this damn thing. Get out of here, Prime. So How to Get Rid of a President by David Priest is History's Guide to Removing Unpopular, Unable, or Unfit Chief Executives. It really should be called The History of the Brookings Institution Interference in Elections, because the Brookings Institution was established in 1875, and I was very surprised to read in this book, before Donald Trump's impeachments, we heard quite a lot how only 2 presidents have ever been impeached before, Bill Clinton and Andrew Jackson, I think. But this book gives us a history that almost every single president, there has been a monumental effort to try to impeach them. And it actually gives a lot of insight it seems like there's a large contingency in Washington, D.C. that actually wants a essentially disabled executive, because then they're sort of, they create this sort of de facto Politburo. It is a well-reviewed book. I mean, it's an interesting book. I take it back. This one wasn't poorly written. Some of the other books I've read by some of these guys were poorly, but this one was actually quite good and very informative. Troubled presidencies.
Can you show people what David Priest looks like? Because he's been on TV. He's kind of a popular figure. People will probably recognize and go, "Oh, I know that guy. I've seen him on somebody's show."
He looks like a criminal to me, but
looks like me.
There he is.
Looks like me. Yeah, that's the whole point.
No, I don't know. You don't.
People.
You're both bald, but
bald and goatee. If we put him in the aviators and a black hat, you couldn't tell that wasn't me. If we dressed him up. So
I don't know. So the other thing is, this is also interesting. He's got this podcast with the new Ozempic version of Shane Harris. Isn't that interesting?
Wow, that's Shane Harris.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel. So that's interesting. So David Priest does a podcast with Shane Harris. Now, how do we start talking? So how do we start talking about Priest again? How did we start talking about David Priest?
Brookings.
So Priest, take us back to, how do we get to Priest? Because the fact that, so we're talking
David
about
Priest, remember, he is a fellow at Brookings, and he also is on the board of directors here of the Lawfare.
Oh, he's getting paid, right? He was getting paid, right?
Right.
So he's getting paid by the Lawfare Institute.
He's the chief operating officer, and he was the director during the time that I was, or the president perhaps, during the time that I was suing Benjamin Wittes. I don't know why they switched roles, but Priest is the COO now.
Right, and he's doing a podcast with Shane Harris. Now, before we jump to the patron-only thing, you have to explain to people the Shane Harris connection, because they're doing a podcast together. He's getting paid by the Lawfare Institute, former CIA. Now, tell everybody who Shane Harris is, and we'll go to the patron only, and
he's the guy who Ben Wittes tells James Comey supplied Ben Wittes with all of this information. Now, here's the important thing, and we're going to look at this document. This might be the first time, I can't remember. Maybe we looked at it on one of...
Shane Harris is the guy with Wall Street Journal, right? And isn't there a phone call involved right before we go to the patron only? Wasn't there a phone call?
I spoke to him.
Yeah.
Shane Harris. You can listen to that if you want during the sponsor exclusive segment. So Shane Harris, the important thing about Shane Harris is he calls Charles Ortel on June 30th, the very first day I meet Charles. He had written this article the day before on June 29th. GOP operative sought Clinton emails from hackers, implied a connection to Flynn. So they're pushing this whole concept that Peter Smith, this article is written by Shane Harris. I don't know if he's received help from David Priest. This does not appear to be David Priest, much fatter. But here's General Flynn. And, this thing talks about how they're trying to get 33,000 emails, Hillary Clinton emails, hacked by Russia. So this is where this notion of 33,000 emails came from. I don't believe there ever were 33,000 emails. That's just made up nonsense by Shane Harris and Ben Wittes and all these idiots at Brookings and Lawfare, and also Matt Tate. Is involved
here's where
here.
It mentions the Wall Street Journal.
Shane Harris.
Given to me by Shane Harris. Now, the first time you meet Charles Ortel, set up by Trish the Dish
and George
Webb, you're meeting Charles for the first time, and the phone rings, and it's
Shane Harris.
Shane Harris.
And he's rude as hell to Charles, which, by the way, he's calling up some unknown business person wanting a comment for a Wall Street Journal article. You'd think he'd be professionally cordial. He calls him up like I call up somebody on a Jerky Boys call. So it's a much different demeanor. I mean, look, I know when I'm being aggressive or rude with somebody on the phone. There's a lot of people who tell me, oh, you would have gotten much further if you were polite. And the guy said he'd reschedule the call. You should have rescheduled it. He was ready to talk to you. So I was like, okay, Dick, where's your library of impromptu interviews with adversarial witnesses who don't want to talk to you, who the only reason they're not hanging up immediately is because they're trying to find a moment to hang up without making it look like they're extremely guilty. They're not calling back. But the point is, Shane Harris was not polite to Charles, and it's my allegation that all of these guys, Shane Harris, Ben Wittes, Norm Eisen, James Comey, Jim Baker, Rybecky, McCabe, all of those guys were in on this plan to get Trump. And when they talk about the deep state, yes, it's the FBI, but it's also these nonprofit agencies. It's also Twitter. They've basically absorbed and control Twitter. And I'm not convinced that to this day, this Twitter problem has been resolved. Because you see, if Elon Musk had said lawsuit, strangled outside the office, what is all this? Let me read this. Let me sit down with the lawyers. Tell me what's going on. Who is this guy, Goodman? Get him on the phone. I want to understand what he knows. None of that has happened. Michael Schellenberger, Matt Taibbi, Elon Musk, they have jealously avoided the Twitter coup information, like the same way that Ben Wittes and Shane Harris and all of these guys avoided speaking to me, which is what led to the Goodman v. Boozy case. Because remember, when I finally got Ben Wittes to agree to interact with me, it was in a Twitter, ask me anything kind of text interview, but he didn't allow me to ask him anything. He was quite evasive, and he basically left in the middle of the conversation. And that's when I was introduced to Chris Boozy, who basically destroyed my Twitter account, my YouTube account, my Facebook account. He did a lot of damage. That scumbag really needs to be properly dealt with in court. But wait, one important thing.
People don't know who Chris Boozy is. Chris Boozy is something.
Oh God, we got to do an episode about him.
Bot Sentinel, right? Bot Sentinel.
We're going to talk about Chris Boozy a little bit today, but a lot of people, since I confronted Ben Wittes on the street, have noticed that his account has been suspended on Twitter. And people might think, oh, he must have done something. Most people, I think, who watch our show consider a Twitter suspension a sign that somebody is doing, something worthwhile and good. But actually, well, we're going to have to go into this during
with the patrons. Yeah, we'll do it with the patrons.
I just realized he's also got this blog called Dog Shirt Daily. So that makes sense. But Benjamin Witte's on April.
He also does that YouTube podcast that you and I tried to have an interaction in the chat room 4 years ago or something. Yeah. And he's in there with the girl and the other guy, and they call it Cheese Hour or some cheesy name.
In lieu of fun or something like that. But just real quickly to tie these guys all together and show that there's no mistake here. We're going to get much more into this during the sponsor exclusive segment. But he decided when he woke up this morning and saw that Pawn All the Things, which is Matt Tate's Twitter account. See right there, it says,
I don't know who
Matt Tate is the proprietor of the private British intelligence company that wrote the document, gave it to Shane Harris. Shane Harris gave it to Ben Wittes. Ben Wittes gave it to the FBI. But he woke up that morning on April 1st and saw that Matt Tate was having fun impersonating the Russian Foreign Ministry on Twitter, and that his Twitter account might not survive this April Fool's, and it didn't. So he's telling you he did something that got Matt Tate suspended, and of course he got suspended as well. What he's not telling you is that this coincides with a filing in Goodman v. Boozy, where if their filing had failed, I would have moved ahead to discovery, and I would have been able to get all these DMs and everything from his Twitter account. So by deliberately suiciding the Twitter account with this very obvious duplication of something that, knocked out Matt Tate's account, he got all of his Twitter information spoliated. So this is what I've been talking about forever. All these legal morons who know that Twitter is under control of the FBI, they do something like this, and it doesn't count as spoliation of evidence. He just played a joke. Twitter rules. You go tell a judge about this, and they'll say, well, sorry, Mr. Goodman, this is a Twitter problem beyond the scope of this court. Let's move on to the next thing. That's how judges work. Ben Wittes knows that. I now know that. People sitting at home or watching on YouTube and Twitter who listen to legal eagles like Robert David Steele think all you need to do is threaten somebody with a lawsuit and suddenly you're getting flooded with discovery. It's extremely difficult to find information from people who want to hide it from you, lawsuit or not.
Sure.
That's what's going on with Ben Wittes. We should get over to the sponsor exclusive segment.
The patrons want to hear the conversations. You've got some stuff to play for them. I'm excited. This is another amazing web of deception, and you guys are going to find out more about Peter Smith. Did he commit suicide? Was that just for the press? We're going to find out more about that on Web of Deception. I'm John Cullen. We'll be back with our patrons in just 5 minutes.
What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut in the ocean. Yeah. What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut. She says that I'm cool. I'm like, yeah, that's true. I believe in G.O.D. Don't believe in T.H.O.D. She keep playing me down. I'ma play her for fun. Don't really know my mental. Let me give you the picture like stencil. Falling down in the drought. No flow rain was pouring down. See that pain was all around. See my mom was kinda loud. Didn't know which way to turn. Flow was cool, but I still felt burned. Energy up, people feel my surge. I'ma kill everything like this bird. What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut in the ocean. Yeah. What you know about rolling down in the deep? When your brain goes numb, you can call a mental freeze. When these people talk too much, put that shit in slow motion. Yeah, I feel like an astronaut.